Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit where the inner warrior shines in their light. Today I have a friend of mine, Mai Vu. She is someone I've known for about 10 years now. We haven't had a deep personal connection, but we've had a friendship through mutual friends. And she's just someone that I've really grown to respect and appreciate who is within my circle. And Mai is an owner of Elevated Emergency Restoration and just a great spirit and a great heart. So thank you for joining me today.
Well, Daryl, thanks for having me today.
I know that we played a lot of scheduling tag to get you here, so I'm grateful that you're feeling well enough to come today.
Yeah, I'm I still have a slight cough from the flu that I had in December, but um for the most part, I'm better, so thank you.
Um, did you, I know we're both currently in the Phoenix area. Did you grow up in Phoenix or did you grow up somewhere else?
Did I grew up in Central Phoenix, so like around the 7th Avenue, Missouri area.
Okay.
I also went to Central High School and you know, I kind of attended a little bit of college and then I ended up dropping out, but I found a place in life that makes me really happy. So,
So, Central Phoenix is not known for its safety zone. What was life like in mid Phoenix growing up? Was it easy? Was it fun? Was it hard? What was it like?
I mean, you know, I didn't grow up in the most wealthiest area, but my high school was right next to Xavier and Brophy. So
Hmm.
I had a lot of friends that like I went to middle school with, and they ended up transferring over to Xavier Brophy when we went to high school. So I don't, you know, I feel like a lot of people who didn't grow up in Phoenix have some sort of safety feeling of it's Phoenix, right? I mean, I feel a little more sketch being on the west side of Phoenix than like the area that I grew up in. And I had a wonderful childhood with a lot of my lifelong friends that I went to school with, and it actually wasn't that bad. Yeah.
Nice.
I
Yeah,
mean, I
um
mean, for sure it was underdeveloped, right? So now we're looking at 2024 and a lot of things are very well established now. So like that area that I grew up in, you're like, wow, this is a nice neighborhood. So
Nice. Yeah, well, I've lived in Phoenix three times now. This is my
yeah.
third time here. And my second time here, I was actually homeless, living on the streets out of my car. And
Uh-huh.
so I went to back then they had a YMCA downtown, and I
Okay.
went to the YMCA to spend a night, and I actually felt safer in my car than in the YMCA. So I only spent one night there. I got back in my car and I just started staying in parking lots and stuff on the north side. It was for me, coming from a small town, it was
Yeah.
different and scary. So
Yeah.
when you went to, you said you grew up pretty happy.
Well, I mean, for the most part, um, I can tell you that a lot of people do have sobby stories, right? Like who hasn't gone through um, some pain growing up? And, you know, it wasn't the best childhood, but for what it was, you tried to really make the best of it. And, you know, my safety or the feeling of safe was never at home. It was always when I was at school. It was always when I was at events. It was always if I was spending time with my friends' family. So, yeah, I grew up in a drug addict family. I grew up in like an alcoholic family. I didn't have a whole wealth of knowledge on a lot of things in life. So, I grew up in a family of seven older brothers, and I'm the youngest and only girl. So, um, I mean, it was a painful childhood for us, not having my mother around, and we were raised by a single father. But, you know, I've lived my entire life, probably up until my late teens, always in like survival mode. So,
Hmm.
um, but as you get older and like you surround yourself with like-minded people and you establish roots and you develop and like grow into the person you want to become, and like you look back at your past and it makes you realize that like you never want to wait in line at St. Vincent de Paul for food again. Like you never want to go to the church and ask for food again. Like you never want to go hungry again. So, you know, I think what I did through my entire childhood was grasp onto people that I felt safe with. And it could have been like my teachers from school, it could have been my coaches from school, it could have been my friends' parents. So I was just someone who never dwell on a lot of the circumstances that I had no control over. I didn't have control over my household. I didn't have control over, you know, how we're going to eat tomorrow. So, um, but when I was out of that environment and I was at school or at friend's house or whatever, like I mentioned, it was some of the most memorable times that I
Hmm.
can recall that I felt like, oh, I had some kind of balance in childhood, even though I may like feel completely anxious to go home, but I always like secured myself with friendships that I've had. And, like I was just very blessed that I had friends in school that knew my upbringings and their parents were loving, like extremely loving to me and just welcomed me into their home and fed me and if I wanted to, I was able to stay there for the weekend and like so I kind of had a safety net. So and when you kind of grew up in a family where you just raise yourself, like you become street smart
Hmm.
and you know, I feel like if I wanted something more, that I was deserving of it. So yeah, and that mindset and basically what I'm saying is I didn't want to become a victim or like play victim my entire adulthood. So and
This
I
is what I
kept
find
that.
about this is what I find about people that I interview and talk about. And you're right, we all have something, right? To whatever degree it was for us. But what I find is that the ones that overcome it and go on to live a good life like you're currently living, have that mindset of, this is not going to be my life. My circumstances are not going to define who I'm going to be. And they find other mentors or other friends or other support systems to help bring them into a different stage of being. And that's what I admire about you. You know, seven brothers and a father is like having eight fathers.
Mhm.
Brothers tend to be very protective of their little sister and tend to, also try to dictate in a father type way to their little sister. So It's kind of like growing up with eight fathers, which
Yeah.
in and of itself is hard to, meet people or have friends or whatever. But the fact that you looked around at a younger age and said, no, I'm going to do better than this, and you found outlets for it, that's an amazing spirit to come from. And that's kind of why I, love talking with folks like you, because um, you have that tenacity to not be a victim to your life, but be a victor of your life. Um, did you use sports or music or other type of activities in school? Did you gravitate towards anything like that?
Yeah, I did. I ran track, played basketball, played volleyball. Every season I was always in a sport. So, and the longer I could stay away from home, you know, um,
Hmm.
like I felt free and safe. And so utilizing school and like this sports system they had there, um, it was my outlet, and it made me like, so I didn't feel like my childhood was deprived in a way.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I had to mature a little bit earlier than most kids did, but had I not had that upbringing, I probably wouldn't live my life with so much grace.
Hmm.
Um, and I probably wouldn't be as thankful. So like the challenges and like the obstacles that we all have growing up, like the growing pain, like really structure, you know, um, it molds us into like the person that we become. So
Hmm. So
yeah,
when you got old enough to leave school, and you said you tried college for a little bit, what?
I went to college on and off. Yeah, I was a pre-dental student.
Okay.
So
And did you just decide that you didn't like the medical field, or what?
um, well, I worked in the orthodontist office with Dr. Gary Brigham, who's my first mentor. He actually recently passed away in December, and he was like a father figure to me because I started there when I was 20, and then I quit when I was 30. So, while I was going through school, I actually wanted to become uh, a dental hygienist, and I wanted to clean teeth. And so I actually met Dr. Brigham through a friend, and then he kind of persuaded me to work there, and I kind of worked, in people's mouth and chair side to get some experience. And then after a while, I was like, I actually want to become a dentist. So every person that ended up working at Dr. Brigham's office at some point wanted to become a dentist, you know, and so I went to school, and I think what made me change my mind was when I had to take biochemistry. I was done. I took that class and I was like, I'm done. And OChem, OChem bio, I it was not my strongest subject. And at that point, I had been doing it for 10 years anyway, and I kind of felt like burnt out. I looked up the statistics of, you know, happiness of like dentists, and I'm too much of an extrovert to be working in an office and sitting there and working in people's mouth and not being able to talk. You know what I mean?
Right.
I realized it was not my field anymore, and that I had to let go of what was no longer serving me. And then I just made my way into like the construction industry, and I just realized it was my calling, and um I'm very glad I made that move because I'm 37. I'll be 38 in May. So I've been in the construction industry for a while now, and it just it's like life changing. Like I feel at home. I love what I do. Um, I love building relationships, and the connections and friendships that I made over the years has been has been life changing. So,
So it's a very 180 field from dentistry
oh,
to construction.
oh yeah, I felt like I went from like a white collar industry, right, to like a complete 180, like you said, to a blue collar. And I just connect mo I mean, so much more with people who just like work with their hands and, you know, structuring things, building things. It's like you have a whole different appreciation. I mean, if you look around, like if it wasn't for construction workers, we probably wouldn't have any of these, you know what I mean? Or actually,
Right.
we wouldn't have any of this. So it's, I have a whole lot of respect for those that are working in this field and in this industry and, the trade workers. It's like, yeah, I just admire that. So,
So what's the catalyst that takes you from a dental office to a construction site? Like what's the thing that makes you say this is my field, especially since it is such a 180? Like
uh,
what was that catalyst?
you know, I don't know. Like I landed in this industry just by accident. So when I quit my job, I was going through changes in my life and I was like really unhappy. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do with myself anymore. And I'm like, I'm 30. I don't like I'm a college dropout. The only thing I know is orthodontics. I don't want to work at another dental office. I don't want to be an assistant. I don't want to work chairside. I don't want to work in people's mouths. So like where can I go where I can be where I can have an opportunity to do, I don't know, grow and like develop some kind of skill set that would be beneficial. And I mean, all it took was one introduction from like one of my best friends at the time, to um John Garrigan, who's now my business partner. And he oh he had owned or co-owned a very established commercial landscaping company. And when I met with him, he knew that I was going to be his business developer. And, and I didn't have any experience in like this industry, but he said, all it takes is building relationships. And I'm like, I love building relationships. This is where I belong. You know, um, so when I got my hands dirty in this industry, I learned a lot. I listened to understand. I helped work in the field so I know what I'm selling. And I just built, I don't know, like I found something I actually really like doing. And then going from landscape to actual construction has always been like, I didn't realize that I was really going to enjoy this. And when I remodel homes or when I finish a tenant improvement job, like I just feel like, I don't know, I just finished a job recently and it was almost a $500,000 here on 16th Avenue in Camelback. And I was just blown away. Like I looked at myself and I was like, when I took on this job, I was kind of like, I think I'm in this like way in over my head. And and when I finished it, I was just blown away was so much like, I don't know, like the right
Right.
word to use. Like I was proud of myself.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe that I did this. I
Yeah.
can't believe that I took on a job that I was feeling a little iffy about, but I executed it, and it just boosts your confidence every time you finish something and you're like, God,
Well, that's the
it's
part that I
amazing.
mean, I can imagine that you didn't have that feeling every time you finished a cleaning,
Yeah.
but to have it every time you finish a job, that inner confidence and that inner boost has to just magnify the rest of your life because now you have more confidence and more pride. But what I like about you and your story, Mai, is that um, um, you can be a girly girler, but you can also be a tomboy and get out there and get your hands dirty. Like, you're really good at the sales part because you're really good at the connection part, but you also know what you're doing because you're good at getting your hands dirty part. So you have encompassed both phases of the business, which, does make you stand apart because you have, both worlds that you play in. And, but one thing that I've noticed about your story so far, um, whether it be overcoming your childhood situation or just pivoting off of your career or taking on this extra project, in spite of the fear, if you will, or the intrepidation, if you will, you boldly do it anyway, and then you conquer that. And that's an attribute that I think more people need to embrace. We're all going to be afraid of something. We're all going to have doubt. We're all going to have a piece of us that we're just not quite sure of. But if we step boldly into it, the results become pretty amazing, don't they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like the number one thing is that a lot of people tend to go into things with a whole lot of ego, right? And I remember when I started my company, um, I was I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I want to start this business, but I know some of it, but I don't know all of it. And asking for help, like asking my peers and asking other owners who own the exact same type of company that I own, and like everyone was so receptive and everyone was willing to help and like I mean I was blown away. I was blown away and like the only way to learn and like the only way to scale is reach out for help when you need help, and I think that a lot of people um and I would say men, because I work in a male dominated industry and
Hmm.
had project managers that I've hired on and you know like I love it when my team asks for help. Hey, um like it's the only way to learn in life is to ask for help, and we become so fearful of asking, you know because we don't want to come off as incompetent, but at the same time, how do you think that one person learned how to do this or that, right?
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, like I was just blown away by how receptive everyone was, and it was a blessing. It was truly a blessing. I've learned so much in the last 2 years. Excuse me. I took my general contractor's license in 2020 or like 2022, and like when I was studying for it, there were like a handful of questions that I didn't understand. And, when I reached out for help, um, it just allowed me to like, whoa,
Yeah.
like I was blown away. Like I grew so much within the last few years that um, I was like, this is where I belong. Like, I love this industry. I love this field. I love my job and I'm so grateful for it. And, it's, I don't know, like it's hard work, but I feel like we don't have grit, right? Everything you do, it takes courage.
Hmm.
Mm, Without grit, I feel like it's really hard to scale your life. So,
Oh, I love that phrase, scale your life. But it also takes courage to ask for help, which is the amazing thing. A lot of us, it's our ego that gets in the way of us asking for help, but other people are so willing and eager to share their knowledge with somebody else, and they feel honored that somebody would ask them,
yeah,
so if we step out of our own ego, it allows someone else to step into their gift, which might be of service,
yes.
and it becomes a nice synchronicity. But I love what you said just now, and I'm probably going to steal it and use it. Scale your life. Like, you don't get to scale your life. That's a beautiful way to look at things, because too many people that I find are content just blindly walking through life and punching the clock and going home and mindlessly watching TV, and then punching the clock and going home and mindlessly watching TV. And I feel like we're all built for more. I think that's why we're going through some of the trials and hardships we go through, to build that grit, to give us a better, more expansive life. And if you don't embrace that part of it, you don't get to scale your life. And that's one of the beautiful things about you. I watch you now and I see you living life on a grander scale. You're out actually doing and living what you're passionate about. And I think that's a message that more people need to embrace.
I mean, at this stage in my life, I'm reaching my later 30s. Um, I just wake up every day and like the first thing I do in the morning is I write in my journal and I give gratitude for everything and everyone in my life. And, you know, um, I didn't have the best childhood. I didn't have a lot of experiences that most of my friends did in their childhood where their parents would take them on vacation or they'll go on trips or, you know, just things you can look back and be like, oh, I remember that Christmas. I've never got, I mean, I was raised a Catholic, so it's not like we didn't celebrate Christmas. We just didn't have that kind of money to celebrate Christmas. But you know what? I had a great father and he he explained why we didn't have the things that we have. So, even though I had a rough childhood, I also had wonderful brothers. I had great siblings and and when your parents share with you why certain things can't happen or why you can't have something, I feel like it teaches you way more compassion. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
I became, I don't know, I became more compassionate and like understanding of like my father. Um, and I held like less resentment, towards my family. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, like, I think if you just work through life's lessons, like you really grow up to embrace the challenges because without challenges, there's no growth.
Hmm.
So, my mentors always said, life is school. When school is over, you go home. So
Hmm.
you might finish one chapter of your life, or like you might run into an obstacle, you're like, oh God, why does this keep happening? And then you learn that lesson, and then there's another lesson, and there's another lesson.
Yeah.
So you're constantly learning and adapting. And so if you're not adapting to your environment, you're really going to struggle through life. So, but I walked through life just asking for help. You know, um, I had a whole lot of fear of rejection. what if like somebody wants to gatekeep something from you, right? Or like, what if someone doesn't want to help you? And I felt like that was like I was scared of that because I grew up in a family that didn't like asking for help.
Hmm. Yeah, I heard a mentor of mine once say, our goal in life isn't to avoid challenges. Our goal in life is to be strong enough to handle the bigger challenges.
Yeah.
And I feel that's kind of what you've embraced in your life. I want to ask you just a couple last questions here. If someone watching this is going through some struggles or going through some changes or trying to take their life to the next level, expand, scale their life like you said, what is a piece of advice that you'd give them to help not be the victim of their life, but be the victor of their life?
For me, I can honestly tell you that I've read a lot of books. I've gone through therapy. I what was really important for me, but also challenging in the beginning was to try to sit still.
Hmm.
You got to sit in your calmness. You got to find that solitude. And when I finally worked on myself, right, I finally learned how to say, okay, I'm going to sit for 30 minutes. And one day I scrap a piece of paper and and ever since then, I've been doing this for the last 15 years. Every day I write, I write down 10 things that I'm grateful for. And then I write short-term goals.
Hmm.
What are my goals for the end of this week or the end of this month? What am I trying to accomplish? You know, if I'm going to school, what classes am I going to take? You know, and I set small goals that can be accomplished. Every week, I always set myself like I carry a piece of paper in my pocket all the time and I always have a pen in my purse and I'm constantly checking off my list, and you got to do that. You got to stay really connected with yourself and you got to stay committed and in order to do that, you got to stay organized. And for me, it was writing short-term goals. Okay, I'm in a really rough stage in life, for example, and if I feel like I'm always short on cash, I'm at the end of the month, I'm always struggling to make rent, whatever it may be, I will say, okay, this week I'm gonna um actually this is from personal experience when I was younger. If I knew I needed $500, right, at the end of the month to make rent, I will always find a way to make that $500. If I got to pick up a shift, if, like I was always really good at working with my hands. So, like my goals for that month would be okay, reached out to XYZ, see if I can pick up shifts. If I can't, here's what I'm going to do for this person in order to accomplish this. And it just like really allowed me to stay focused on that one goal for the month. But in order to accomplish that one goal for the month, like I had to make like weekly,
Hmm.
um, that's like that's actually a really bad analogy, but it's like I'm just trying to share things from personal experiences, and like,
But it's actually great because a lot of people do long-term goals or futuristic goals.
yeah,
And by doing the short goals, the shorter span goals, you gain the confidence for each goal that you attain, and B, you live your life with intentionality. you don't just coast through the day. You know what you're trying to accomplish. And so the intentionality builds a better life. And I think that's a area where a lot of people miss.
Yeah, like you have to be intentional with everything that you put your heart and soul into, because there's no way that you can accomplish what you want to execute, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
without setting small goals. A lot of people set like really long, big, unaccomplishable, I'm not sure if that's a word or not, but
It is unattainable.
unattainable goals, um, that they get so overwhelmed with, how am I going to get there? Okay, I'm trying to start another business. Okay. And and I'm so ADHD that I get really overwhelmed every time I think about, I need to start this business by this date.
Hmm.
Well, this is a true story right now, so I'm like, okay, at the end of this month, I need to start working on my website. I need to start working on this, this, and this. I set 3 goals or like 4 goals for that month. And then for the following month, this is what I do so that I don't get completely overwhelmed
Hmm.
with the load of work that I'm putting onto myself, because I am someone that if you give me everything, I'm like, whoa, too much. I can't handle that.
Yeah.
So setting short-term goals will allow you um to see like the bigger picture in the end, because it's hard for me to see like the big picture when, I mean, like I'll see the big picture, but I'm like, how do I get there?
Right.
Oh, like there's just so much work, and it helps me like just stay organized if I just have a list of like daily or like weekly tasks, and like those are goals for me. Like,
Right. You get to avoid being overwhelmed by the magnitude of it all. And
yes,
it's the eat an elephant one bite at a time scenario, you know?
yeah, and stay focused, stay the course. It I always tell my friends who have consulted me and like asked me how I felt like when I started my business. I'm like, I can tell you it was overwhelming. It was not an overnight thing, but if you want something really bad, you'll always find a way to get it. But it's not going to come to you. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I'm an opportunist when it comes to business. Like if someone presents something to me, I would have to think thoroughly how it's going to benefit me, but is it also going to work or not? Right.
Hmm.
So like you have to go through the process of managing. I don't
Yeah, and
know.
it goes back to that intentionality, I think. And that's an area I hope whoever's listening to this, I hope it's a big takeaway that, live your life with intentionality, and then, the bigger things can come to you. Want to ask you one last question. I ask it to every one of my guests who is in my tribe and in my circle. What does a warrior spirit or having a warrior spirit mean to my?
Not giving up on yourself. Definitely not giving up on yourself, because in the last 4.5 to 5 years, many times I've looked back and said, I don't think I can do this. I, I don't think I can do this anymore. I'm overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. I'm this, I'm that. Or I don't think that I'm capable. But I realized that the more I thought so negatively, I felt like my energy was being drained. And when I learned how to speak like more lovingly to myself, right? Um, I just had a whole boost of confidence of just like wow, like actually I can do this. You got to be your biggest fan. Like all the people around you that you surround yourself with, all the like-minded people will be like your cheerleader, but they're not the one that's going to make you successful, right? So you really got to believe in yourself and like don't give up on what you're passionate about. If like yeah, I stress that because yeah, I can recall going back and feeling like I wanted to give up so many times. Like every time I struggle making payroll, every time I struggle with having enough funds to finish a job, I get so exhausted and like overwhelmed. And it's like living paycheck to paycheck, right? Because that's what it is when you have a startup company. So I'm glad that I didn't give up because, you know, I became my biggest fan. And 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 sometimes you work 12-hour shifts, sometimes you work 16 hours, but
Hmm.
the one thing is that I stayed true to myself because I I knew that I wanted this. So I had to believe myself and like you know, without pushing yourself, without believing in yourself, it's really hard to accomplish a lot of things that you want in life and it's like impossible to be honest with you. So, having a warrior spirit is also being of service to people too. And so
Hmm.
I always put that as like my number one thing, right? Like being of service to people is one, and the money is always there. It will always come. Yeah, business will flow in and out, but I actually take pride in being of service, like helping people and like I just learned so much from my first mentor, Dr. Gary Brigham, that like he had a warrior spirit and you know, I gained a wealth knowledge from him and from leadership, with how you treat people because I wasn't always a good person. So
Well,
yeah.
it's your grit and your heart and your giving and your true warrior spirit that you exhibit every day that makes me a fan of yours and makes me glad that you came on and shared your journey and your story. And I appreciate you, and I just want you to have, a great rest of your week and a beautiful rest of your life.
Well, thank you, Daryl, for having me. I'm extremely bad at interviewing, so it always makes me nervous and I freeze, but like I'm very thankful that you chose me to be a part of this. So
Well, you are definitely someone I appreciate having in my tribe. And, if there's anything that we can do for you, just reach out and ask, and we'll be there any way we can.
that's good. Thank you, Daryl. I appreciate you.
Alrighty. Bye now.
Bye.